Welcome to 7 Days Report, your reliable source of information from all major news from around the world. I'm your host, Vasilios Nikolaos Vitsilogiannis. Every weekend at 12 and 21, we bring you the latest headlines, in-depth analysis, and insightful commentary on the stories that matter most. Whether you're tuning in for a recap of the week or looking for a deeper understanding of global events, we've got you covered. Let's start with our first news. House Speaker Mike Johnson strongly defended President Donald Trump's decision to deploy 2,000 National Guard troops to Los Angeles, calling it exactly what he needed to do as large-scale immigration protests swept the city over the weekend. The move, which bypassed the authority of California Governor Gavin Newsom, has ignited a heated political debate over federal intervention and states' rights. Johnson dismissed concerns about the federal response, stating, "That is real leadership, and he has the authority and the responsibility to do it." Johnson praised Trump's actions as necessary to restore order, emphasizing that the president has the authority and the responsibility to do it in the face of escalating unrest. The protests erupted following a series of immigration raids by federal agents, leading to dozens of arrests and confrontations between demonstrators and law enforcement. Reports indicate that some protests turned violent, prompting the use of tear gas and stun grenades by local police. Trump, citing what he described as radical left protests and a need to protect federal personnel, invoked a rarely used federal law to federalize the National Guard, a move not seen in California since the 1960s without a governor's request. Governor Newsom and other California officials condemned the deployment as deliberately provocative, arguing that local authorities were capable of managing the situation. Newsom accused the administration of seeking to manufacture a crisis and urged residents to remain peaceful. Despite the backlash, Johnson maintained that the federal government must be prepared to do what is necessary to ensure law enforcement can perform their duties. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth echoed this sentiment, indicating that further military involvement could be considered if violence escalates. The deployment has sparked a broader debate over presidential powers and the balance between state and federal authority during civil unrest. A devastating school shooting at the Borg Dreierschützengasse secondary school in Graz has left 10 people dead, including the suspected gunman, Austrian authorities confirmed. The attack occurred around 10 a.m. local time at one of Austria's largest schools, sending shockwaves through the city and the nation. Police responded promptly after reports of gunfire, securing the scene and evacuating all students and staff to a safe location. The suspected shooter, believed to have acted alone, was found dead at the scene, reportedly having died by suicide. Local media indicate the assailant may have been a 22-year-old former student who entered the school armed with 2 weapons. Among the 9 victims killed besides the perpetrator were at least 7 students and 1 adult. Dozens more were injured, with reports indicating that around 28 people received medical treatment at nearby hospitals. Emergency services, including a helicopter and specialized Cobra tactical units, were deployed to manage the crisis and provide assistance. Graz Mayor Elke Kar described the incident as a terrible tragedy, expressing deep sorrow for the victims and their families. Styria Governor Mario Kunasek and Austrian Chancellor Christian Stocker also conveyed their condolences, with Stocker calling the attack a national tragedy that has deeply shaken the country. Authorities have stated that no further danger is anticipated, and crisis intervention teams are supporting survivors and relatives. The investigation into the motive and circumstances surrounding the shooting is ongoing. This tragic event marks one of Austria's deadliest school shootings, profoundly affecting the community of Graz and prompting national mourning. Ukraine has reclaimed the remains of 1,212 soldiers killed in the ongoing war with Russia, marking one of the largest repatriations since the conflict began more than 3 years ago. The transfer, confirmed by Ukraine's coordination headquarters for the treatment of prisoners of war on June 11th, follows days of tense negotiations and mutual accusations between Kyiv and Moscow over delays and procedural disputes. The bodies, returned with assistance from the International Committee of the Red Cross, were retrieved from various frontline regions, including Kharkiv, Donetsk, Luhansk, Zaporizhzhia, Kherson, and Sumy oblasts, as well as Russia's Kursk region, where Ukrainian forces have previously conducted operations. Ukrainian authorities have stated that forensic teams are now working urgently to identify the deceased and notify their families. The repatriation comes after peace talks in Istanbul earlier this month, where both sides agreed to exchange not only prisoners of war, but also the remains of thousands of fallen soldiers. The agreement reportedly covers the return of up to 6,000 bodies from each side, although the process has been fraught with accusations of stalling and political maneuvering. Russian officials, including Kremlin aide Vladimir Medinsky, claimed that Ukraine had initially failed to collect the remains, while Kyiv accused Moscow of acting unilaterally and using the issue for propaganda purposes. During the same exchange, Russia received the remains of 27 of its own soldiers from Ukraine. In a related development, both countries are set to begin exchanging seriously wounded prisoners of war on Thursday, focusing on the youngest and most severely injured soldiers as part of ongoing efforts to address the humanitarian toll of the war. This large-scale repatriation underscores the continuing human cost of the conflict, which, according to Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, has claimed the lives of more than 46,000 Ukrainian soldiers since 2022. The United States has ordered a partial evacuation of its embassy in Baghdad, directing non-essential staff and their families to leave Iraq as regional tensions with Iran reach new heights. The move, announced Wednesday by the State Department, comes in response to heightened security risks following stalled nuclear negotiations between Washington and Tehran. While officials have not specified the exact threats prompting the evacuation, the decision follows a warning from Iran's defense minister, Aziz Nasirzadeh, who stated that Iran would retaliate against American military bases in the region if nuclear talks collapse or if Iran is attacked. The State Department emphasized that the safety of American personnel remains a top priority, with a spokesperson noting, "We are continuously evaluating the suitable personnel stance at all our embassies. Following our most recent assessment, we opted to minimize our operational presence in Iraq." The partial evacuation also extends to the voluntary departure of military dependents from U.S. installations across the Middle East, particularly in Bahrain and Kuwait, as authorized by Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth. The Pentagon has indicated readiness to assist with the evacuation should the need arise. The embassy in Baghdad has operated with reduced staff for months due to ongoing security concerns, and this latest measure is not expected to affect a large number of personnel. Nevertheless, the announcement has sent ripples through global markets, pushing oil prices up by more than 4% amid fears of broader regional instability. Approximately 2,500 American troops remain stationed in Iraq, where U.S. forces and interests have frequently been targeted by Iran-backed militias, especially since the onset of the Gaza conflict in 2023. The State Department has reiterated its Level 4 Do Not Travel advisory for Iraq, citing terrorism, kidnapping, and armed conflict as persistent threats. Diplomatic efforts are ongoing, but with nuclear talks at an impasse and both sides issuing stern warnings, the risk of escalation remains high. In the early hours of Friday, Israel carried out a massive and unprecedented series of airstrikes against Iranian nuclear facilities, missile sites, and senior military leadership, marking a dramatic escalation in the long-standing conflict between the two regional powers. The operation, codenamed Operation Rising Lion, involved over 200 Israeli fighter jets targeting more than 100 sites across Iran, including the critical uranium enrichment facility at Natanz, missile manufacturing plants, and the residences of top military officials. Explosions were reported in Tehran and several other cities, with eyewitnesses describing intense blasts and fires near military bases and nuclear installations. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu announced the strikes in a televised address, stating, "We are at a decisive moment in Israel's history. This operation will persist for as long as necessary to eliminate this danger," referring to what Israel described as an imminent threat posed by Iran's advancing nuclear program. Iranian state media confirmed significant casualties, including the deaths of Hossein Salami, commander of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, and Major General Mohammad Bagheri, the Armed Forces Chief of Staff, as well as several senior nuclear scientists. Civilian casualties were also reported, with strikes hitting residential areas in Tehran. The Israeli military declared a nationwide state of emergency, anticipating missile and drone retaliation from Iran. Air raid sirens sounded across Israel and neighboring Jordan, where authorities intercepted several drones and missiles. Civilian airspace was restricted in Israel, Iran, Jordan, and Iraq as tensions soared. The strikes come just days before scheduled nuclear negotiations between Iran and world powers, with the International Atomic Energy Agency recently declaring Iran non-compliant with its nuclear obligations for the first time in 2 decades. As the region braces for further escalation, Israeli officials warned the campaign could last for days, vowing to eliminate Iran's nuclear threat. As we wrap up another edition of the 7 Days Report, I want to extend my heartfelt thanks for joining me this evening. Remember, you can catch us every weekend at 12 and 21 for your weekly major news from around the world. Stay tuned for our next meeting, where we'll dive deeper into the stories shaping our world. Until then, take care and keep informed. This is Vasilios Nikolaos Vitsilogiannis signing off. Goodbye.